yes I try, yes I try, yes I try to wear a smile on my face. This world is a terrifying place. So I try, yes I try, yes I try, yes I try to wear a smile on my face. I'm worried about the check that I put in the letter in the box where they get the mail. Will the furniture company get it in time? And if not, will they go to jail? Will they come and take the dresser and the bed and the chair? Will they come and take me too? Cause I don't wanna go there. So I'm worried about the check in the letter in the box where they get the mail. This world is a terrifying place. So I try, yes I try, yes I try, yes I try to keep a smile on my face. This world is a terrifying place. So I try, yes I try, yes I try, yes I try to keep a smile on my face. But I'm worried about the driver of the car. Yes, I'm worried about the driver of the car. Hey everybody. It's nice to see you all. Now I'm sure when you see a thumbnail like the one I put up, I was wrong! Right? The first thing you think is that, like, I got caught chasing my secretary around or something. Fortunately, if I did get caught chasing my secretary, it would be cool. Because my wife is my secretary, and I have a license. But, no, I realized I was wrong about something. Not completely wrong. I just think that I didn't have the... right perspective. Hey Becky, how do I get water to all my plants during the dry spells? To glorify God. Thank you, QRP Life. Here I will actually read the This is a good question. Here we go. Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. That is the first question. What is the chief end? And what is the chief end of man? From the Westminster Confession. And the Westminster Confession goes on from there. It's excellent. But actually, I think that is from the Catechism. Anyhow, yes. So, let thy wife be thy secretary, and thy secretary thy wife. It makes it so easy. Thank you, QRP Life. I appreciate it. So, how do I get water to all my plants during dry spells? I generally rely on the rain. If it gets really dry, I drag a hose out. I use a little bit wider spacing, but we are in a region here where we get about 75 inches of rain a year or something ridiculous. It's terrible. It's a terrible amount of rain, so it's usually not a problem. We will get 2 to 3 weeks of dry spells sometimes, but generally think my plants live through that because I don't plant most of them all that close on purpose. Like my corn isn't at 18 inches or 2 feet. My corn is planted at 3 feet apart. Same thing with turnips and other things. If I don't want to have to water it, I just plant it wider. So what was I wrong about? What was I wrong about? I had the wrong perspective, I think. Carolyn. I don't know if Carolyn's here this evening. I didn't see her yet. She's usually here. Oh, yep, there you are, Carolyn. Carolyn told me I need to get chickens again. Now, a few years ago, I just got so... and on the unsubscribe button. I got so irritated at chickens. And I started totaling up the amount I'd spent on chickens over the years. I started thinking how many hours I spent on chickens, how much hardware cloth I had bought, neighbors' dogs killing chickens, hawks killing chickens, possums, rats, raccoons, finding a gutted chicken out in the yard. Unbelievable. I was calculating it out. I did an entire article, goodness, a few years ago. Let me find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna read it to you so you can understand where I'm coming from. You ever just look at something and say, this is not worth it? Why am I pouring money into this? On June 1st, 2017, I wrote a post. This is while I was renting down in Grenada. I wrote a post called, "Are Chickens Worth It? Let's Count the Cost." I'm going to leave it right there. That's my website. I just left the link there. If you want to read along, let's read. Are chickens worth it? Are the eggs and meat you get worth the cost of a coop, the cost of feed, and the cost of time it takes to manage a flock? I've been keeping chickens for almost a decade now, and despite my best attempts, thus far the answer is, well, I'll let you decide for yourself, but I know my answer. Here are the big problems. A coop costs money. If you have predators, you can't just throw up some 2x4s and chicken wire. No, you need the hardware cloth, impregnable walls, and roof, and maybe even a concrete floor. If you're lucky, handy, and a good scavenger, you might spend about $200 and $300 for a solid little chicken coop. If you're not, you can spend a couple times that. Or if the Federal Reserve pumps up the price of wood by releasing trillions of dollars into the teeth of a pandemic. But I didn't write that here, because this was the halcyon days of 2017. I can buy farm eggs for $3.50 US per dozen. But hey, I get them cheaply because I live in the third world. You're likely to pay $6 per dozen. That's 50 cents an egg. That means the chickens in a $250 coop must produce 500 eggs to pay off their real estate. But wait, there's more. Chicken feed has a price. A 50-pound bag of commercial chicken feed costs around $16. Each laying hen will consume around a quarter pound of feed per day. In 200 days, you'll need to buy another bag. If you have one bird, that is. It works out to about 8 cents of feed per bird per day. That's not so bad. But your time also has a price. What's your time worth? $7.50 per hour? $15? $50? If you were Donald Trump, it wouldn't make sense to keep chickens unless you wanted to do so as a hobby. Chickens are certainly better company than congressmen and have higher IQs, so I could understand if he did decide to raise a flock. But we're talking about your time. Let's say it's worth $15 per hour. You need to build a coop, buy feed, let the chickens in and out, collect eggs, feed and water the birds, plus hunt predators. Taking care of a flock doesn't take all that much time usually, maybe a quarter hour per day. That works out to about 1.75 hours per week, or $26.25 of your time at $15 per hour. At that rate, you could easily buy a dozen eggs every 2 days from an organic chicken farm. And keep your time. And this is an ideal world. This isn't an ideal world. You might decide keeping chickens makes sense for you even after these numbers, but what about deaths from predators? Going out to the coop in the middle of the night after being woken up by the dying squawks of a murdered rooster isn't fun. Discovering the fox that killed the cock has also murdered all of your pullets is even less so. At our place, rats dug into the coop and killed our chicks. A lot of people suggested building a stronger coop, poisoning the rats, raising the chicks off of the ground, etc., yet that cost more money. Why would I spend the time and effort when I could just buy eggs from down the road for a few bucks a dozen? Well, I've raised chickens for eggs and meat, and I appreciate the manure and the work they do with composting, yet overall, thumbs down. No, heck no, the ideal of chickens has always failed to mesh with the reality of chickens. If I let the birds free range, they'll wreck my newly planted gardens and often end up as predator droppings. If I box them up in the Gallus gulag, they need some more feed and produce lower quality eggs. I'm sure there's a way to keep birds that makes monetary sense, but I haven't found it. I'm no Joe Salatin, and we don't even own our homestead here too. So considering tractors and coops, chicken runs, harbor claw feed time, the numbers don't add up. A lot of us love the idea of birds, or we like chickens the way we like our dogs, but I don't want pets. I want eggs that are higher quality and cost less than the ones that I could buy locally. That isn't happening, so the birds had to go. I bet if you crunch the numbers on your own homestead, you'll see the same monetary drain that I do. So, I did the numbers. I looked at it. I had pests. I had problems. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous, man. So I wrote this depressing, Ballad of the Expensive Chicken, as Steve says here. Sean, I don't think I actually got your email. I mean, if I did get it, I missed it. I get a lot of emails. It was not intentional. I try to respond. I try to respond to everybody, but I don't always get it. But anyhow, I did the numbers, and I just said, forget it. Come on. And then, Carolyn, you temptress, you instigator, you fire starter, Carolyn's like, you need to get chickens. Here's a few dollars for some chickens. And then like the next day, here's a couple more dollars for chickens. And then like a week later, here's a couple more dollars for chickens. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like guilty now because she keeps sending me a few dollars and saying, chicken fun, chicken fun, chicken fun. What am I supposed to do? I can't just spend that on cigars. I mean, if I started spending all my money on cigars, I mean, what would I do? It'd be terrible. So anyhow, I spent it all on chickens. I got myself some chickens. I didn't buy any cigars with it. Carol, sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Involuntary. Or vodka. I didn't buy vodka with it either. That's water. It's from a Berkey filter. It's almost as expensive as vodka. So, yeah. I got the chickens again. But, you know, it's funny. When you've killed a lot of things... Don't even bring it up, Lauren! No! Lauren says, and now you have goats. And now you have the biggest drain in the world. We're going to talk about the goats. We're going to talk about the goats, too. So why did I get... why did I get chickens again? I don't know. It's because Carolyn. It's Carolyn's fault. Carolyn's fault. I'm not a natural leader. Obviously. I succumb to peer pressure. I want to be a man going his own way. And Carolyn tells me I need to get chickens, and I get chickens. So anyhow, what I did realize though, I made every mistake with chickens possible. I think I've made every possible mistake with chickens. Not every possible mistake in the entire world. I'm still making new ones. There's plenty of new ones. But with chickens, I think I'm pretty good. Lots of problems. Predators. Free-ranging birds in a high predator area is a way to get them all killed. When I first got into chickens, and I was reading all this permaculture stuff, because I am a permie. I love permaculture. It's beautiful. I mean, I like to hang out with guys with long hair and girls with problem glasses and talk about sustainable ecology all day. But free-ranging birds got my birds killed. I remember a hawk flying down and taking one of the pullets out of the backyard. When I was in the backyard, boom, I hear beep, 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 beep. And the bird was actually got carried up in the air by a hawk. The hawk proceeded to land up on top of the power pole and tear the bird to pieces where I could hear it peeping, but I could do nothing about the hawk. Oh my gosh, I was so mad and irritated and upset. Hey, Sean. Catch you later, man. So, yeah, that was bad. I also found that the neighbor's dogs came through the fence and tore up some of my birds. We had different predators getting in different nights. Lost a lot of birds. I learned that putting a tractor out with no bottom on the tractor means that an animal will dig underneath the tractor and murder everything in it. And no matter how many times I see all of these chicken tractor videos and stuff, and people just put them out in the field. How do you do that? How do you do that? I'm friends with Justin Rhodes. Justin Rhodes is my homeboy. But, no. I realized that the safest way to keep chickens, if you want to keep chickens, is to spend the money on the front end and get strong wire, hardware cloth, bury it around the edges. Yeah, if I were a hawk, I would eat chickens. So there's this ideal of chickens. I tried the tractors. I built I built like 3 different tractor designs in the past. That was before I was really doing much on YouTube. I did a lot of stuff before I was on YouTube. I've had goats before. We raised goats for a while. We've raised goats, guineas, rabbits. It's not coming out of nowhere when I do these things. During the after the housing crash and the Great Recession, we had a lot of these things just because we didn't know how bad it was going to get. So I just realized you gotta lock those chickens up. The reality of the chickens is a pain, but I had somebody else's coop set up when I was in Grenada, and it didn't work. It didn't keep the rats out. I didn't have a way to set it up properly. I had very few resources. I was half broke, just moved to a new country, was renting. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this chicken thing. We were getting like 2 eggs a day. Ridiculous. Plus, the woman that gave me the chickens kept checking on them. She kept checking on the chickens. You can't keep them locked up. They need to free range. Those birds will be so sad. And I was like, finally, like, just take them back. It's crazy. So, yeah. Juicy Fruit Forest says, we left our free rangers to roam and put up a 10-foot coop with a run to keep the new flock contained for compost and reduce the death count. We finally agreed after talking to you. It's just, you know, do you want your chickens to die? Or do you want to put them in a cage? In a lot of Florida, I mean, everything wants to eat your chickens in Florida. There are places where the predators are not that big a deal. But where I've lived, the predators are a big problem. There are a lot of nighttime predators and there's daytime predators too. And I don't like dead birds. Now I do let my birds free range for a couple hours at the end of the day before sunset to go wandering. I've been trying that the last week so far. But, man, I looked at it and said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do this again. And then Carolyn started bugging me. So here we are. We've got chickens again. Now, I've realized I made most of the mistakes already. I've got the chickens locked up. They're in a coop where they can't get killed. And when I built this chicken tractor, I made it ridiculously sturdy. And I put a no-dig skirt around the bottom of it so animals hopefully cannot dig in or won't be able to figure out how to dig in and kill them. The grazing hour. That's right, Love Cat. That sounds like that would be a good that'd be a good book title. The grazing hour. She was an attractive heifer. He was okay. That's enough. So anyhow, we've figured it out. And we've also been experimenting with food and with soaking and fermenting grains and all that kind of stuff. And I'm actually really, really enjoying it. And another thing changed over the years. My diet has moved more and more towards an animal-based diet. I do eat plenty of vegetables when they're in season, but I eat less roots and starches than I ate in the past. So, for my nutrition, I would rather put the plants through an animal first and convert them into animal fat, animal protein, animal milk, animal eggs, whatever. So that's kind of the way I've been moving. And I do believe in supply line disruptions. Somebody brought it up back here a little bit, that we will be happy to have them. Yeah, Shane says $5 a dozen eggs. SHTF, $25 a dozen eggs. Math works when society doesn't. But yeah, no free ranging for me any longer. Grow crops specifically for chickens to reduce costs. Feed them weeds also. Yeah, they eat a lot of weeds. They do well. Gypsy says listen for the crows during the day. They warn about hawks. I've seen them following the hawks. It's really cool. Jacob, your last name is Hawks. I was super paranoid about chickens, but I've only lost 2. One was retarded and wandered off. The other was unhealthy. Yes. Sometimes nature culls them. Can you feed chickens chaya in small quantities? Probably. A little bit. It probably wouldn't hurt them. They'll eat a lot of stuff that we couldn't. But of course, if you cooked it, you could feed them as much as you wanted. But that's a lot of work, you know. We did get a few goats. It's my next video. Nat Green says, I used to be raw food vegan. Ruined my digestive system. I eat more meat than anything now and no grains. Yeah, same here. Same here. Even soaked grains don't sit very well with me. I run on pure high-octane meat. So, I realized we've got to do this thing again. So what we did was we went and we got layers. We got some of the best laying varieties we could get, with some of them being dual purpose. So the birds if we decide to eat any of them, we'll have heavier bodies. It's always a balance with chickens. You've got the heavier birds that lay less, or you have the real scrappy high laying birds like the leghorns. The leghorns, man, they can lay almost an egg a day, and they don't need that much food. They're scrawny little chickens. They're a really fun bird. They're not the friendliest bird in the world, but they're really fun to watch. They've got these big floppy combs, and they walk around and they just peck and fight and run all over the place, and they take care of themselves really well. Those are good birds, but there's not much to eat if you ever, you know, if you hatch the eggs out and you get roosters. It's you know, it's there's not much to eat there. They are scrawny. So we basically grabbed whatever birds we could get that we knew were pretty good egg-laying varieties from the local feed store. They had brown leghorns, so we got some of those. We got some buff Orpingtons. We got a few black Australorps. We got a few red. They're called production reds. They're pretty much like a Rhode Island red. It's a brown egg-laying bird. We got 4 of those. One of those was killed by a predator before we finished all of the fencing properly, and 2 of them turned out to be roosters, and then we got 1 hen. So we have 1 hen and 2 roosters of that variety. We've got some, I think they're called California Whites. They are basically a leghorn with some spots on them. They're mixed with barred rock or something. So we got this variety of birds, and in the mail a few days ago I got 107 more birds, of which 100 have survived. Chicks don't, the survival rate's not great on chicks, especially when they're shipped, but you know, 100 out of 107 isn't bad. And of those, about 30 of them are egg layers, and 70 of them are red broiler meat birds, which is a meat bird that we can reproduce by incubating the eggs. They will actually lay eggs. They don't end up with weird heart disease and stuff, but they take a lot longer to produce than the Cornish cross. The Cornish cross is the freakish, large-breasted, massive, fat chicken that just like, oh my gosh, I'm growing so fast, my feathers are falling out. You know, they're terrible. They are the bird that you get from the grocery store. They produce meat very, very quickly. 6 to 8 weeks is, you know, man, you got birds. Yeah, it's funny that it's Hidden Valley Farms hatchery. I ordered some Cornish cross and some red broilers because I figured I'd get some meat really fast in 6 to 8 weeks from the Cornish crosses, and then from then on I would just breed up our own variety of meat birds by just crossing the fattest birds and incubating the eggs. And then they called me the day of and they said, we are really sorry, we have to ship your order, but we do not have the Cornish crosses that we thought we had in stock. Can we substitute red broilers? And I said, sure, that's fine. I said, I wanted some Cornish cross just for quick meat, but I'm happy to try these. So they ended up sending me 40 extra birds. Like they did it on purpose. They wrote me and said they sent extra because they felt bad about messing up the order. So now I have way too many birds. It's a good problem. So we're gonna raise some birds out on pasture for meat, and then we also have our high laying varieties. So that's the way it's going. I think the highest quality food to survive on is meat, eggs, and dairy, at least for my digestion. Your mileage may vary, but I feel good on a diet like that. I eat a lot of good vegetables, but not a lot of starchy vegetables, and basically 0 grains. So, and I don't eat legumes very often at all. So if I can convert garden material, into animal foods, that's great. I have scrambled eggs for breakfast every morning, and I put kelp meal in them, or Rachel does when she cooks them. I cooked them this morning. Usually she does. So kelp meal, and then we have usually have ground beef. Sometimes we have bacon. No, it's not. The kelp meal is from the other coast. I checked, not the Fukushima coast. So, that's how the day starts, and I've been eating pickled okra. My wife live fermented okra. It tastes great. It's all like super slimy, but I like it. Um, and then right this time of year, it's root season again, so the kids eat a lot of roots. Kids do well on some carbs. So the sweet potatoes are just coming in, and we're gonna have yams, we're gonna have cassava, and I'll definitely eat some of that because I love it. But I'm thinking about the high quality of nutrition. It's really hard to beat an egg yolk. An egg yolk is basically a multivitamin, particularly if you feed your animals well. So my vegetables are nutrient dense, and so the food scraps coming out of our kitchen are nutrient dense compared to store-bought. I try to add the nutrients to the soil to get the most nutrient dense food possible. I absolutely love plants in the brassica family. I love cabbages, I love broccoli, I even kind of like turnips. I didn't used to like turnips, now I like turnips now that I discovered the white lady and the white egg turnips. Both of those are very nice and sweet. I like carrots, I like a lot of herbs. But I love the brassicas in particular, and so do the chickens. When you feed the brassicas to the chickens, particularly kale, the egg yolks get darker and yellower because of the beta carotene, the extra nutrition that they get. Really good. Lauren says, we collect moringa, dry it and powder it. Good to add to all sorts of stuff. Yeah, we've done the same thing. It's good. So, we have just jumped back into chickens, and I'm finding that it's working surprisingly well. I had a lot of knowledge. I'm not as broke as I used to be. Carolyn basically picked up the bill for me to buy the first set of chicks, and here we go. We're doing it, and I'm very happy to have that. But we went another step further, and we got goats, which I mentioned to you guys. And the goats are turning brush into goat, which is good. I got two really sweet dairy goats. They're very nice goats, friendly. One of them was bottle fed, so she'll just follow you around like a dog. It's hilarious. Like, she'll just walk behind you like, what's going on? Where are we going? Where are we going? Hey, you want to pet me? I'll hang out with you. It's so funny. She's the sweetest thing. The other one's a little more standoffish, but you can pet her while she's eating. She doesn't really want you to hang around her that much, but if you feed her, she'll stand next to you and let you pet her. So I know that she can be trained to milk. They're not going to get bred now for a few months until they're old, little older and bigger. We could technically breed them right now, but I want them to have more body weight on them, be big and strong before they get bred and have babies. So we are using them right now to clear weeds. And I'm working on Create Your Own Florida Food Forest. I was working on it again, and I went back and I said, you know what, I'm going to talk a little bit more about animals in here, because I know in Florida survival gardening, generally in Florida, trying to keep animals, particularly in an urban environment, etc., is mostly a losing proposition. When we were on smaller acreage, we had 1 acre, and we kept goats, it was a bad deal. We didn't do particularly well with rabbits. They kept getting sick. Snakes would get into the system, and it was crazy, man. We had so many snakes. And then the chickens kept getting killed. It was, it was a bunch of catastrophes. The guineas went into the neighbor's yard and would bother her, and she was threatening to call animal control. It's just like, oh my gosh. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So plants... I really dedicated myself to the food forest system. So, whoa, hey Grow Shake, hey 10-year-old, how are you? Glad you enjoy watching gardening videos. Glad you're here. So, we looked at this, Yeah, I looked at this in Florida, and I'm like, you know, a lot of these animals don't really make a lot of sense, particularly if you're trying to get food for less work. Animals take much more work than do plants. Plants live their lives on a much slower pace than animals. You forget to feed your animals for a few days, they die. That's cruel. That's evil. You have to be out there checking on your animals every day. You got to go visit them, make sure that they have food and water, that they have a little bit of companionship, that their stalls are mucked out, that they're healthy, that they look good. You have to be nice to them. Plants don't really complain that much if you don't feed them and water them every single day, unless you've got like a total aquaponics system or a intensive garden bed system or something like that. You know, if you plant your plants really tightly together in poor soil, yeah, you got to water them every day, but generally you can walk it away for a few days and you don't have to feel guilty about it, and you're not being cruel. Plants live their lives like on a low chill level, man, and you can get away with not taking care of your garden for a week. You can get away with not taking care of a food forest for months. So I tend to go for a really simple sort of a system. Food forest is like maximum simplicity. It's a small amount of work for a good yield over time. It takes time. It's slow, you know. Yeah, Pastor Don says no one calls in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, your plants escaped the fence." Exactly. Hey, Abe. Thank you. Thumbs up. My kids are my gardening buddies. Don't ever stop gardening. If you know how to grow your own food, you are going to be an accomplished man. Every person should know how to grow their own food. If you're learning at this age, you'll be better than me by the time you're my age. Good work. I'm glad you're interested. It's very worthwhile. It's good to know where your food comes from. So, you know, looking at the animals, there's a lot more trouble. But I'll tell you what, as I have gotten more concerned about the food supply and the supply lines, etc., animal food seemed like a much better idea, and it's worth the extra effort. So I spent a couple of hours working with the animals today, working on the goat enclosure, feeding the goats, talking to the goats, cutting some brush for them, moving the chicken tractor, feeding the chickens some soaked grains, getting the eggs. You know, there's a lot of letting the chickens out, putting the chickens back. These things become worthwhile when you look like things are getting a little stressed. No, I would definitely not do aquaponics for fish or meat. What I would do, if I were going to raise fish, I would try to raise them in a larger pond so I didn't have to put in the effort. The aquaponics systems consistently fail and kill fish. On paper, aquaponics looks like the most amazing idea. In reality, it's a lot of fiddling. It's like having a jalopy car that you have to fiddle with all the time, except that every time it breaks down, your fish die. So, yep, we're back at it with the animals. Now, another thing which I wanted to say about what I was wrong about. I was wrong to look at chickens and animal raising just in terms of economics. When I was broke, that made sense. I'm not as broke now. We are not trying to maintain ourselves in a foreign country. Not as broke as I used to be. I've had more success. I've written more books. The book royalties pay the rent, which is amazing because most authors can't say that. So I think one of the things that when you're broke, you scramble, right? When you're broke, you eat ramen. When you're broke, you eat hot dogs. When you're broke, you buy cheap eggs. When you are able to have a little breathing room, when you get a little savings in the bank, Then you can start looking at getting better quality food. You look at, maybe buying some pork chops when they're on sale, buying some broccoli. Maybe you have salmon and asparagus one night. That's really nice. You know, um, you eat nicer food. I grew up eating very simple food that was affordable because I grew up in a large family, and that's not the best. You survive, but obviously you can eat better, right? You can eat more nutrient dense stuff. You could have more fresh vegetables and more liver. You could eat better cuts of meat. You could eat grass-fed beef. You could spend the money to get raw milk, that sort of thing. But what I found at the real peak of it all, if you want to really eat the best diet possible, it's to grow and raise your own food. And the part of my food that I have basically outsourced for the most part is the animal portion. The vegetables and the trees are super easy, at least for me. And I find that to be more than worth the investment. I don't invest tons of money in my gardening. I like to do everything's really simple. Simple, simple, simple. And not that expensive. Somebody said with my chicken tractor, why don't you spend money on nice stuff? I don't want to spend money for the sake of spending money, and I don't care about nice stuff. I'm not a nice stuff guy. I don't really like it. You see this guitar? I have a Taylor. This Castilla Chinese-made guitar I paid 15 bucks for in a thrift store, and I have been playing it much more than my Taylor. The Taylor feels too nice. I bought the Taylor thinking that I should really get a good guitar because I was older and my dad had died, and I was thinking, I've been playing junk guitars my entire life. You know what I'm playing now? I'm playing a junk guitar, a $15 guitar from a thrift store. I'm playing a junk guitar and it doesn't matter, 'cause I'm not a professional musician. I feel like I'd spend this huge day when I buy a new t-shirt. I do buy stuff sometimes, but I'm just not really a stuff type of person. I like simple. You see, these shelves in here, I got the cheap brackets. I got the brackets that were on sale so they don't match. Some of them are like silver and some of them are black, whatever. So I was looking at it in terms of finances. But you can't get food anymore that's as good. You can't buy food that's as good as what you can grow or raise. I have been reading the Weston Price Foundation website. I like Sally Fallon. She wrote Nourishing Traditions. And I don't necessarily go in for all the eating grains and balancing carbs and stuff. I pretty much just don't eat much carbs. But I've been reading it and I'm looking at some of the food choices. If at all possible, drink raw milk. Well, guess what? I can't buy raw milk because the communists made it illegal. Actually, it's worse. The crony capitalists made it illegal so the big dairies could run the market. The public health people made raw milk unaffordable, unobtainable. You have to go and say it's for your pets because it's too good for us. If you try a chicken that you free range them on grass, feed them some oats, feed them good wholesome food, not garbage, soy waste, trash material in a dark house that's filthy, where all the chickens are fed antibiotics every day so they don't die. You raise your own bird on grass and you taste it. First time I had a pasture-raised chicken, a farm-raised chicken that a friend of mine raised, I could not believe the flavor of that bird. And it was a Cornish cross. It wasn't like it was some special heirloom bird with like tufts coming out of its head or something. It was a regular old Cornish cross, the same birds that we get sold, you know, chopped up in pieces with Tyson label on them. The same nasty birds, but his bird tasted so good. It was as good as eating a steak. It was the best meat. You don't know what real food tastes like. I didn't know what a real chicken tasted like until I was like 30 years old. And I tried one from my friend's farm. I didn't know what a real peach tasted like until I was in my 20s and I moved to Tennessee. And I had a peach off a tree. Wow. It's not the same as those bitter, rubbery things you get in the store. I didn't know what real bananas tasted like. I had the bananas from the store. They tasted pretty good. A little bit grainy, kind of sweet. They're okay. Then I had bananas in the Caribbean, right from the volcanic soil, ripened properly. Not sprayed with tons of chemicals and picked really green. The banana was sweet and tart and tropical and exploding with flavor. There's these notes of flavors you don't even know. You don't even know are there. It's beyond it. It's like candy. I didn't know. And that's why I was wrong. Some of these things you can't measure in terms of economics. You can't say, well, my home-raised tomato cost me $2. The one I got from the store cost me $1, therefore I'm not going to raise tomatoes anymore. No. Because your home-raised tomato was hopefully not sprayed with pesticides. It was fed in rich soil. It's sweeter. It's richer. It's got the enzymes. The sun shone on it. It wasn't under lights in some greenhouse. It's delicious. It's rich. It's alive. It's fresh. It's real food. Michael Pollan wrote about us consuming food-like substances. Your home-raised food is real food. It's not food-like substances. If you have had fresh cherry tomatoes from the garden, you know what I mean. It's incredible. Gersh says, oh man, I grow 3 varieties of banana. I can't describe the improvement in flavor. Carolyn sends a super chat. Thank you very much, Carolyn. You've done enough, Carolyn. You got me started. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I love you, Carolyn. You're a good sister. Thank you very much, Charlie. Charlie says super chat. Life's a garden. Dig it. Peace and a dove. The dove with the olive branch. That's after the flood, the dove came back with an olive branch. So, if I go and I buy mayonnaise from the store, what do I get? GMO soybean oil, nasty factory egg, emulsifiers, salt, some chemicals. So mostly soybean oil. Soybean oil's nasty. If you have stuff with soybean oil in it, canola oil, cottonseed oil, throw that stuff out. That's nasty. That is bad for you. You know what's good for you? Beef tallow, especially grass-fed. Pork lard that's actual lard. It's good for you. Olive oil that's actual olive oil. That's good for you. Coconut oil that's actually coconut oil, like tastes like coconuts. That's good for you. Butter, that's good for you. But factory processed, bleached, treated oils from GMO plants, that's nasty. That's where I think all the heart disease and stuff is coming from. Yeah, you make your own mayo. It is time versus money, Tim. Absolutely right. But my wife does, she makes mayonnaise. We buy olive oil. It's actually difficult because some olive oil is not particularly great stuff too. You're always, anything that's coming from off of your farm, I think is suspect. I think we've been lied to a lot by companies, by governments. We've been lied to a huge amount about almost everything. Remember that the consensus is almost always wrong because most people are idiots. Just keep that in mind. And there's usually money behind the consensus. There's a reason there are these consensuses. So the consensus is, you know, eat a bunch of grains and try to avoid meat, and you know, vegetable oils are better for you than saturated fats, etc. And yet we have an incredible amount of disease. We have an incredible amount of disease now. You know, diabetes used to be almost non-existent. Super, super rare. And now it's something like 1 in 7 people have diabetes. Why is that? Because we're eating a bunch of sugar. Not only that, we're eating a bunch of high fructose corn syrup sugar. And we're eating like, you know, 50 times the sugar that we were intended to eat. And we're eating tons and tons of gross oils. And who knows what kind of pesticide loads our bodies are taking up. And who knows what the GMOs are doing. Who knows all this stuff? It's terrible. So when you grow your own food, you know where it's coming from. But then, you know what? I have not read Ray Peat, but I will look Ray Peat up because I read voraciously. I finally read the Atkins book recently, and I realized how mischaracterized the man was. I thought that Atkins was basically like you eat ham until you lose weight. And it turns out he's telling you to eat vegetables and all kinds of other stuff, and he was completely misrepresented. Atkins' diet is actually very healthy. And I'm reading it, I'm like, wow. I remember people saying, oh, you just eat butter and bacon. No wonder you lose weight. You're killing yourself, you know. But, no, totally wrong. He was all about health. Anyhow, it's really hard to do things the right way. And I've talked about the never-ending purity spiral before, where you want to do everything just right. You want to have no chemicals in your garden. You don't want any chemicals in your food. You don't want any chemicals in your body, you know. And it's like one thing after the other until you're like making your own soap over a fire in the backyard, and you know, you're you're drinking water from the pond and boiling roots because you can't eat anything else. You're you know, I don't know. You can go crazy. But there is certainly a lot of value in eating nutrient-dense food that you've grown yourself. You can grow and raise better food. Your eggs from your backyard chickens, even if you feed them garbage chicken feed, if they're out in the sunshine and they're running around and they're eating some kitchen scraps and weeds, those eggs are going to taste twice as good as any eggs you would get from the store. They taste twice as good because they're better for you. The chickens are healthier and happier. From that point, you've made this huge jump. The huge jump is growing the thing yourself. The huge jump is growing homemade kale, growing kale rather than getting it from the grocery store. I had kale that I grew at home, and I really liked it. I loved the flavor of it. I didn't really like kale from the store. It wasn't that great. So the first time I grew it myself, I was like, this is actually a pretty good vegetable. I like this stuff. It's different. That's the big jump. The big jump is growing the tomato. The big jump is raising the chicken. But from there, you know, you do your best. And there really is a time and money thing going on. When you are broke, it is really hard. You go into survival mode. We've done it. During the pandemic, I bought a bunch of cheap, storable food before the grocery stores shut down. They actually shut down where we were for a while, and it was very difficult, very hard to get any groceries. And I had stockpiled ramen, noodles, mayonnaise, dried beans, rice, and then I planted the biggest gardens that I could possibly plant so we would have good food coming into it. But man alive, you just want to get through that crisis when you're broke. It's hard to think about your health. But your health is very, very important. Most of our health problems are caused by our diets. Most of it. I would wager it's nearing 100%. Not all the way. There are genetic components, there are injuries, there are other things. But if you eat junk, your body gunks up. If you are overweight, eat the lowest glycemic index stuff you could possibly get, because every time insulin is released into your system, your body is told to store fat. So if you eat beef, eggs, chicken, vegetables that are not starchy, basically anything that raises your glycemic index, you keep your carbs below 20 carbs a day, you will lose like 5 pounds a week. And it's not because you're starving. You'll be totally full. It's because you're not pinging, goong, bing, bing, every time the insulin floods through your system to deal with the sugar. It plugs your fat cells. It says, don't release fat. Store fat, store fat, store fat. The Atkins knew it. The paleo people know it. The carnivore diet people know it. People knew this a long time ago. That the stuff that will make you heavy is it's potatoes, it's bread, it's rice, particularly if you're living a sedentary life. Most of us are more sedentary than we should be. But you're not going to exercise your way out of being fat. You will lose the fat by restricting your carbohydrates to an insane level. I mean, you're not putting sweet sauces on anything, right? Salt, maybe some hot sauce, but make sure it doesn't have any sugar in it. Keep your carbs really, really low. The fat literally just melts. The fat cells just dump. My sister lost like 90 pounds in a year and got so much healthier because she paid attention to the glycemic index of foods. She basically just went for everything that was low carb, really low carb for a period of time, and she got so much healthier, and she looks so much better, and she's not allowed herself to go back to eating that high carbohydrate diet. Our food is killing us. Kelly says, I stopped my college studies of dietetics because I realized I'd be fired the first day because I wouldn't spread the diet propaganda. Yeah, you try to eat a low-fat diet? Try to eat a low-fat diet and lose weight. You're starving. Fat fills you up. And ironically, eating fat helps you burn fat. So, it's crazy. Lives Outdoors says, I cured my autoimmune disease with growing my own food and eating only that. I'm so happy. God is good. He gives us what we need to help ourselves. That is great. I used to have chronic heartburn, joint pain, and a gut in my late 20s, and I was getting heart palpitations. The doctor told me I needed to go on statin drugs and lower my cholesterol. Isn't that crazy? They prescribed me. I would be dead by now. I think, if I followed that. Instead, I started researching diet, and it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I discovered, or early 30s, I guess, that I discovered that my problem was the carbohydrates and that wheat was killing me. I had an allergy or something to wheat, and I got that out of my diet. Better. I could stay lean now. Now I tried to bulk up this year so I could put on weight and build muscles, going to the gym 3 times a week. I'm still going to the gym, but I I can't keep it on. It starts to go to my gut, but I mean, it was going to my chest and my arms too, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. So I went back to eating my regular diet. I tried to push the carbs up and bulk up, but it didn't work that well. I did put on some muscle and I've held it, but whatever. I feel better. You got to figure out what feels better for you. But I'm telling you, don't consider it all in terms of money. I was wrong. Your health shouldn't be measured necessarily in money, and I don't think it really comes down to having to spend tons of money going to the Whole Foods store or whatever. I think that you can grow your own food, raise a few chickens, get rid of the worst offenders out of your diet, and get a few good nutrient-dense foods growing in your backyard. Grow some kale, some moringa, some eggs. If you got more space, see if you can get some dairy animal if you really want to do that. I'm a homebody. People say don't get dairy animals because then you can't travel, but I don't really want to travel anymore, and I don't think traveling is that much fun anymore anyways. I don't enjoy flying with all the crazy security and stuff, and I certainly don't want to wear a mask for hours. I don't breathe that well with a mask on. I really don't like it. It's unpleasant and it feels stupid. So I would rather stay home, and I think I'm just going to stay home and milk goats and grow my kale. So, yes, that's right. Riverdale Garden says, sugar becomes fat. It's right. Yes, you'll also find ketosis if you starve yourself, but you don't have to. You can eat fat and protein and you won't, you know. Marine76 says, at what stage do you harvest black velvet beans to cook? I get them when the pods are swelling out and it's obvious bean shapes inside. You'll get the idea. When they're still green, but the pods are not really hard yet, but they have swollen. Like about how you would shell out green beans to eat if you wanted to shell them out. So. See, Carter Chef says, carbs are good, just the right carbs. Can't talk about pasta and simple sugars, fructose, fruits in the same groups. No, there's junkier carbs than other carbs. Dairy cats, that's hilarious. There are carbs and there are carbs. However, if you are overweight, don't ping an insulin response at all. So, if you can stop pinging the insulin response, that's why in the first phase of Atkins, Dr. Atkins is like, look, don't eat any fruit. So I thought, well, that means Dr. Atkins actually hates fruit, but that's not true. I like fruit. I ate a lot of fruit when I was in the tropics because I worked it all off and it didn't matter that much. There's a definite difference. I mean, if you eat an apple, that's not the same thing as drinking a glass of apple juice. A glass of apple juice is loaded with sugar. You just took the sugar out of like 10 apples without the enzymes, without the fiber, without the bulk that stops it from just being a straight sugar rush. You just basically drank a syrup from the apples that will ping your blood sugar like crazy. And if you're trying to lose weight, yeah, don't eat fruit. Don't eat fruit, don't drink fruit juice, etc. For a while. When your weight is where you want, enjoy fruit. You know, you can even have some cheesecake once in a while. It doesn't matter that much, but you know. Loch Ness sheep, that's funny. Yes, Atkins says you can have berries, but the problem is some people are super addicted to sugar. And if you're super addicted to sugar, even having some berries, they will pig on them. I know people that you give them a little sugar and it's just like an alcoholic. So to just deny yourself completely and say, hey, I'm just going to not eat any sugar whatsoever, any carbs whatsoever for a period of time, that's a really good thing. You get some of the benefits of fasting without actually being starving. So juice and pop are definitely lethal. Anyhow, when people cut out carbs, they're also cutting out pesticides, lots of other things. Well, that's part of it, but the sugar is part of it too. And eating out every meal is too. But sugar is a drug. We're not really made to eat that much sugar. Sugar is way too available. You have to break the addiction to sugar by you have to ditch it all out of your house. If you have a sugar addiction, I was never a sugar eater. I like coffee a lot. For me, quitting coffee is harder than quitting sugar, but I know how the sugar thing works. It's hard. I know people that I'm close to who have a serious problem with sugar. If they have sugar, they keep eating sugar. And you just have to say no to it and get off it to break it. You know? Break it, break it, break it. It's totally worth it. Especially when you notice the weight falling off at like 5 pounds a week. It's amazing. My sister did such an awesome job dropping the weight. It was like, yes! And I told her the same thing I'm telling you guys right now. She did it! I was amazed because it was a remarkable transformation. It's funny. I'm trying to pull something up here. Anyhow, I think that if we can grow the best food possible, that's really what we should try to do inside of our budgets. And I also do think, as one of you said earlier, that this is a difficult time and the supply lines are probably going to break. So it's a good idea to set up systems now so you have food for later, just in case. And if I'm wrong, praise the Lord. But I had good food. Somewhere beneath the ice, somewhere cold and deep, that's where we found it, sleeping through the years, we brought it to the light and took it home. flowers on her way. Dropped her posy in the grass, lost in the moonlight for an age or two. Look at me, Mom, I'm doing science. Look at me, Mom, see it blooming. 30,000 years, 30,000 years. One of these days I'm going to record that properly. One of these, I keep saying one of these days. I think I've said one of these days for 30,000 years already. Oh, come on, Carlo Chav. You're kidding me, man. Ketone smell if someone's starving their body of sugar. Stop it. Sugar is poison. Stop it. No sugar apologists. Your body's just switching to burning ketones, man. It's awesome. Acetone breath. Thank you, Bonnie Blue. Carter Shav, are you fat? I'm just curious. Thank you very much, Bonnie Blue. Second Amendment. That is very kind of you. I don't know about humble. I'm a little bit not humble sometimes. I think I'm pretty smart, and I have to remind myself that the amount of knowledge that I have is only about this big compared to all knowledge that exists. My dad told me that once, and I remembered it. Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you for inspiring us that we can be more in control of our lives. My backyard garden in Winston-Salem, North Carolina shall continue. I have been to Winston-Salem. My friend Kevin Chandler lived there in Winston-Salem, and he's up in some horrible Yankee state now, but where is he? He's like Indiana or something? He's in Indiana, yeah. But I love North Carolina. You got some decent soil there in some spots. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Rich. Shaner S87 says, is mulch from my local municipality safe for the garden? I sure hope so. I already hauled a bunch of it to the house. It depends on if it's been composted with a bunch of stuff or not. If there are a bunch of grass clippings in there, or hay, or manure, or biosolids, that's a problem. If it's just shredded trees from the power lines and stuff, it ought to be just fine. Yeah, Donna, we were talking about avoiding sugar. Okay, well that's good, Kargachev. You can eat sugar, but a lot of people can't. At least not much. Francis says, I saw Edible Acres compost his black walnut husks. Hey, that's awesome. Use as scales, fear me. Carbs are lame, though weak to the sodas. I like tonic from like gin and tonic. A friend of mine, my friend with the mulch garden, who called me a dirty rotten tiller, she wrote me today and said, do you want some wood chips? I might be able to get some sent over to you. And I said, yeah, definitely send me some wood chips. She said that there were some trucks that were hauling a bunch of chips and doing a bunch of shredding, and she caught them and they've been dropping them at her house. She said, do you want some? I was like, yes, please. Our pixie sticks, okay. Yeah, if they're made of saccharin. I didn't grow much tobacco this year. I have a little bit of tobacco out there, but no, I only had like 3 plants, so not really. I need to grow some. I want to grow some for barter, but I haven't really been smoking that much. Yeah, I know, tonic water always has sugar in it, so I'm not drinking it. But I've also found that alcohol does not sit particularly well with me. I have gone back and forth between drinking in moderation and not drinking at all. I like rum. I really like good gin. I like bourbon. I like scotch. I love tequila. But I find that it makes me feel fuzzy, particularly as my diet has gotten better. It seems like my body has become less tolerant. I suppose if I ate like a bunch of fettuccine alfredo or pizza and had a beer with it, I could probably chase it. No, I would die. If I ate that way now, I would die. I don't eat biscuits. No. But the song is funny. Yeah, artificial sweeteners are worse. Saccharin comes from coal tar. I think that's natural. Carter Chef says, what's a good strain to grow? It depends on what you want. If you want cigarettes, grow the big burley, golden burley or burley tobacco. They have nice big leaves and it's a mild flavor with higher sugar. Better for cigarette tobacco, but it's not quite so flavorful. Something like this cigar, right? I think this is from the Dominican Republic. These cigars, let me see. Where are they from? Nicaragua. A lot of the Nicaraguan stuff, there are varieties that were grown specifically for cigars. They have a stronger flavor, and they are often higher in nicotine but spicier in flavor, and you can get cigar tobaccos. If you go to Victory Seed Company, Victory Seed Company has a ton. You'll be like, oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many different choices. If it has higher sugar in it, it smokes sweeter. One of the tricks that the cigarette companies did to make their tobacco inhalable so it doesn't tear you up so badly, like if you try to inhale a cigar, oh man, oh, you choke it. The smoke is alkaline. It does not inhale well. It basically, your lungs are like, oh no, heck no, kick it right out. When you add sugar to it, it can acidify the smoke somewhat, if I understand it correctly. I read this from Gary Taubes. Gary Taubes wrote a book called The Case Against Sugar. And I did not realize they did this, but you add sugar in the curing process, and it makes it so you can inhale the tobacco smoke. So often the sweeter varieties are grown for cigarettes anyways, but sometimes they add extra sugar to it anyways. Which one grows good in Miami? Any tobacco should grow good in Miami. Yes, a burley would grow. The tobacco grows all the way down. Less tolerant, more sensitive. Yeah, you're probably right, Mr. Dawson. William says, beer is my weakness. I understand. I remember reading about how beer drops testosterone levels. You probably don't worry about that sort of thing. But, you know, with your natural high testosterone, William, but I don't like to drop my testosterone level. I want to be like vital, man. I want to be vital until me old. I'm not much into yoga, but I'm into champagne. Thank you very much, Joe. Fresh pressed sugarcane juice, or jaggery. It's good and healthy. I do love sugarcane juice, but woo! Well, thank you, Free Radicals. I appreciate it. Garlic and strawberry. Yeah, that's different for. I have not been in a good garlic climate. It was okay in Tennessee, but not awesome. I did best in Tennessee, better than I did anywhere else. Strawberries did pretty well up there too, but phew. What was that tobacco variety I grew in the video for chewing tobacco? I grew, that was a Cuban seed cigar tobacco that I got from Victory Seed Company. I don't remember what the name of it was. Yeah, the subliminal song worked. Yeah, I bought that weed book. Can't wait to see what I can do with all my weed. That's great. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I was talking to Steve Solomon. Steve knows all about growing cannabis, and he once wrote a book on it, apparently, or he wrote a booklet for somebody who turned around and took it and published it somewhere else or something. And I said, I said, there's definitely money in that. And he said, everybody's written on it now. It doesn't matter anymore. And he's very interested in it for the CBD oil, which is apparently a pain reliever and all that kind of stuff. I just knew. I knew this one guy with who had an alternative lifestyle, who was HIV positive, and he used to get a prescription for that THC pills, and he swore by it. He said it was awesome. But I can't comment on that. I've never grown it. That is the book Winning the War on Weeds, which is our first book from Good Books Publishing, which does not have my name on it. I was asked today again about the sequel to Jack Broccoli. The new edition of Turned Earth is out in paperback. And Turned Earth, a Jack Broccoli novel, the world's first gardening thriller. It's hilarious. I wrote it. So you probably don't know it. I've written like 8 novels at this point, but I write under pen names. So anyhow, I have Jack Broccoli. Turned Earth, the Jack Broccoli novel, is back in print. The sequel to it, I was asked about. When is it coming out? I'm still waiting on it. It is in production. There is some line editing that's going on, and all the illustrations are done. It just needs to get out. The cover's done. It's beautiful. It needs to be done, but we're still waiting. Still waiting. It'll happen. I'm just, it's not me anymore. It's been bottlenecked. So it's coming. And so is Create Your Own Florida Food Forest. And I'm also working on a book for South Florida gardeners, which should be done well. So thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Yeah, nutrient dense. Somebody asked me earlier if I use Steve Solomon's mix on all my beds. I do use it on all the beds now, yes, but it's kind of expensive. So, what is the book I am doing a second edition? That's Create Your Own Florida Food Forest. It is now like 90,000 words long instead of 14,000. It's not a booklet anymore. It's a massive, chunky book on growing food forests in Florida, and it is the best thing that I have ever written. Except for Turned Earth, a Jack Broccoli novel. Wife and kids are well. They're having fun. The kids have been walking the goats around the yard, which is pretty amusing. Tammy says, reading Grocery Row Gardening right now. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. No, I have not had the root mealybugs in the garden. I've heard they're horrible. Fortunately, we've not had them yet. There was one that was killing all of the sago palm plants in Florida. What are my thoughts on leaf blowers? No, I don't care about leaf blowers. I never pay any attention to them. I got one. I was given a leaf blower, but it's broken. It shoots sparks out when you plug it in. Yes, I have spread weed seeds around on purpose. Marine76 says, I wish they would sell a pre-mixed bag of Steve Solomon's mix. We looked into it. It's just the shipping is a problem. I talked to my daughter about doing that. She would mix up the bags, but it's a shipping. The shipping cost just gets expensive. This is the Good Garden Shop. That is the Etsy store. I just dropped it. Well, Vic Wick, enjoy it. I love Florida. We got, one of the goats is a full Nubian goat, and the other doe is a Nubian Saanen cross. So they are full-size goats, full-size dairy goats, good genes. So, cool. I got the leaf blower because I wanted to use it to blow air into a pit forge in the ground to melt metal. I don't know if ants are attracted to compacted soil. You're very welcome, Craze Family Homestead. Thank you, Donna. I better go. I've got to go eat dinner, and I will catch up with you guys soon. I'm gonna probably post a video that shows the goats tomorrow, and then you can see what they look like. They're pretty cute. Anyhow, thank you all for joining me. Thank you very much, Good Gardening members. Thank you for those of you who gave super chats. Please check out the book Winning the War on Weeds, the second edition. Don't buy the previous edition. Buy the Good Books edition because it's been completely re-edited. It is way, way, way better than the previous edition. I'm dropping a link here. So, yeah, I like sides and brooms and everything too. The Solomon's Mix is created for my soil test results, but it would work for general use so long as you didn't have a real big imbalance. So, in the new book that Steve is putting out, he's got a general recipe for it that I think you'll like. So, what is the subject? We were talking about how you can grow much better food than you can buy, and why I am back raising animals again. Have a great night. God bless. Until next time, may your thumbs always be green.